The morning sun filtered through the large glass windows of Elegance, a luxury dress boutique nestled in the heart of an upscale shopping district. The store was known for its exquisite collection of designer gowns and personalized service, drawing wealthy clients from all over the city. Inside, the air smelled faintly of fresh flowers mixed with expensive perfume, a signature scent that welcomed every visitor who stepped inside. On this particular day, the boutique was quieter than usual. A few customers wandered around, admiring the latest arrivals displayed on polished mannequins. Soft classical music played in the background, adding to the serene atmosphere. Behind the counter stood Claire, a young sales associate with a warm smile and impeccable manners. She loved working at Elegance because it felt like being part of something special, something timeless. Just as Claire finished arranging a rack of silk dresses, the doorbell chimed, signaling the arrival of a new customer. In walked a man dressed in what appeared to be an expensive suit. However, the suit didn't quite fit him properly. It hung awkwardly on his frame, making him look more out of place than sophisticated. His leather shoes squeaked slightly against the marble floor as he moved toward the center of the store. This was Mark Thompson, a traveling salesman who prided himself on his ability to charm anyone into buying whatever he was selling. He had stopped by Elegance on a whim, curious about the buzz surrounding the boutique. But instead of marveling at the beautiful creations hanging neatly on display, Mark immediately began scowling. To him, everything looked overly flashy and impractical. "Who even wears stuff like this?" he muttered under his breath, running his fingers along the fabric of a sequined gown without much care. Claire noticed his presence right away. Her training kicked in, and she approached him with her trademark professionalism. "Good afternoon, sir," she said cheerfully. "Welcome to Elegance. Is there anything specific you're looking for today?" Mark barely glanced at her before responding. "Not sure yet," he replied gruffly, "but I'll tell you one thing, these prices are ridiculous." He picked up a price tag dangling from a nearby dress and let out a low whistle. "For this? Seriously?" Claire tried not to let his dismissive tone bother her. Instead, she explained politely, "Our pieces are designed by some of the world's most talented fashion houses. They're unique and made with the finest materials." Mark rolled his eyes dramatically. "Unique? Sure, if you call throwing glitter on fabric unique. And don't get me started on the colors. Half these dresses look like they belong in a kid's art project." His words carried across the room, drawing glances from other shoppers. Some raised eyebrows while others exchanged amused looks. Claire, however, remained unfazed. She'd dealt with difficult customers before and knew better than to take their comments personally. Still, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of frustration bubbling beneath her calm exterior. Deciding it might be best to involve someone else, Claire excused herself momentarily. She headed toward the back of the store where Victoria Langley, the owner of Elegance, often worked quietly when she wasn't meeting clients or attending events. Today, Victoria was sorting through a shipment of new arrivals, dressed casually in a simple blouse and slacks. Her dark hair was tied back in a loose bun, giving her an understated appearance that blended seamlessly with the staff. "Ms. Langley," Claire whispered urgently, "there's a gentleman here who seems challenging. I think you should handle him." Victoria nodded, setting down the garment she'd been inspecting. She trusted Claire's judgment and understood that sometimes certain situations required her personal touch. As she walked toward the front of the store, she caught sight of Mark flipping through a rack of dresses with obvious disdain. His loud sighs and muttered criticisms were impossible to ignore. When Victoria reached him, she introduced herself with a polite smile. "Hello, I'm Victoria. How may I assist you today?" Mark barely spared her a glance. "You work here?" he asked skeptically, taking in her casual attire. "Don't you guys have uniforms or something?" Victoria chuckled, lightly, though her expression remained composed. "We prefer to focus on comfort and practicality behind the scenes," she replied smoothly. "Now, is there anything I can help you find?" Mark shrugged nonchalantly. "I guess we'll see. Just browsing for now." As they began walking through the store together, Mark continued to voice his opinions loudly, criticizing nearly every piece they passed. Each comment grew increasingly harsher, until finally Victoria realized she was dealing with someone who either had no filter or no respect for boundaries. What he didn't know, however, was that the woman patiently enduring his tirade owned the very boutique he was tearing apart. Victoria led Mark further into the boutique, carefully selecting items she thought might interest him, or at least silence his endless stream of complaints. Despite his rudeness, she maintained her composure, determined not to let him rattle her. After all, she'd built Elegance from the ground up, pouring years of hard work and dedication into creating a space that celebrated beauty and craftsmanship. No single person, no matter how obnoxious, could diminish that. They stopped in front of a rack filled with elegant evening gowns, each one adorned with intricate embroidery and delicate beadwork. Mark scanned them briefly before shaking his head. "These look like costumes," he declared loudly, "like something you'd wear to a Halloween party." Several nearby customers turned to look, some stifling laughter while others shook their heads in disbelief. Victoria forced a small smile, refusing to engage in an argument. Instead, she gestured toward another section of the store. "Perhaps you'd prefer something simpler," she suggested, leading him to a row of tailored cocktail dresses. But Mark wasn't satisfied. As they browsed, he continued to mock the designs, calling one dress too frilly and another completely impractical. At one point, he even held up a vibrant red gown and joked, "This looks like something my grandmother would wear, if she weren't already 6 feet under." The comment drew audible gasps from a group of women standing nearby. One of them whispered to her friend, "Doesn't he realize who she is?" referring to Victoria. Others simply stared, waiting to see how the situation would unfold. By now, Claire had rejoined them, watching nervously as Mark's insults escalated. She admired Victoria's patience, but worried that the confrontation might escalate further. It was clear that Mark had no idea he was speaking to the owner of the boutique, and judging by his behavior, he probably wouldn't react well once he found out. Finally, Victoria decided enough was enough. With quiet authority, she guided Mark toward a private fitting area reserved for VIP clients. Hanging on the rack inside were several custom-made dresses, each one a masterpiece crafted by renowned designers. These were the crown jewels of elegance, pieces so exclusive that only a select few could afford or even touch them. Handing Mark a price tag attached to one of the dresses, Victoria watched as his eyes widened in shock. The number printed on it read $50,000. "What?" he exclaimed, his voice echoing off the walls. "Are you serious? No one pays this much for a dress." Victoria crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. "Oh, trust me," she said calmly. "People do, and they appreciate the skill and artistry that go into creating something truly unique." Mark scoffed, clearly unconvinced. "Artistry? Please. This is just a scam to rip people off. You're charging 50 grand for a piece of fabric." At this point, Victoria could feel her patience wearing thin. While she was used to hearing criticism about her products, Mark's blatant disrespect crossed a line. He wasn't merely expressing dissatisfaction. He was belittling the hard work of countless artisans and designers whose creations filled her store. Leaning in closer, Victoria fixed him with a steely gaze. "Let me ask you something," she said, her voice low but firm. "Do you always speak to people this way? Or am I just lucky enough to receive such colorful feedback?" Mark hesitated, suddenly aware that he might have pushed too far. "Look, I didn't mean any offense," he stammered, attempting to backtrack. "I was just joking around," but Victoria cut him off. "Joking?" she repeated, raising an eyebrow, because it sounded an awful lot like disrespect. Not just to me, but to everyone who works hard to make this business successful. Her words hung in the air, silencing Mark completely. For the first time since entering the boutique, he seemed unsure of himself. Sensing her advantage, Victoria pressed on. "If you'd like to continue browsing, I suggest you do so with a bit more courtesy. Otherwise, I can have security escort you out." Mark's face flushed red with embarrassment. He opened his mouth to respond but quickly closed it again, realizing he had nothing left to say. Meanwhile, Claire returned with a ledger in hand, announcing, "Ms. Langley, here's the order list you requested." The moment those words left her lips, Mark froze. His eyes darted between Claire and Victoria, finally piecing together the truth. The seemingly ordinary woman standing before him, the one he'd insulted relentlessly, was none other than the owner of Elegance. Victoria gave him a cool, appraising look. "So, Mr. Thompson," she said, using his name for the first time, "now that we've established your opinions on my collection, perhaps you'd care to share why you're here? Or shall I call security to escort you out?" Mark stammered, trying desperately to recover. "Wait, I didn't mean any of it. I was just—" Mark stood there, frozen like a deer caught in headlights. The realization of who Victoria was hit him like a ton of bricks. His earlier bravado began to crumble as he processed the weight of his own words and actions. For a man who prided himself on charm and persuasion, this was uncharted territory. He had been outmaneuvered by someone far more composed and intelligent than he could ever hope to be. Victoria, still maintaining her calm demeanor, watched him closely. She wasn't one to gloat or revel in someone else's discomfort, but she couldn't deny feeling a small sense of satisfaction at seeing Mark squirm. After all, he had treated her staff poorly, insulted her boutique, and dismissed its value without even knowing its true worth. Now he was learning the hard way that assumptions can lead to consequences. The tension between them grew palpable as other customers continued to observe the scene discreetly. Some whispered behind their hands while others simply smiled knowingly. It wasn't every day they witnessed such an entertaining spectacle unfold right before their eyes. One older woman, elegantly dressed in a tailored suit, leaned toward her companion and murmured, "Oh, I think he's finally figured it out." Claire, standing nearby, suppressed a grin. She had always admired Victoria's ability to handle difficult situations with grace and poise. Today was no exception. Watching her boss take control of the situation reminded Claire why Elegance was so much more than just a store. It was a reflection of Victoria's personality, refined, resilient, and unwavering in the face of adversity. Realizing he needed to salvage what little dignity he had left, Mark tried to backtrack. "Look, Ms. Langley," he began, stumbling over his words, "I didn't mean any offense. Honestly, I was just trying to make conversation." Victoria interrupted him gently but firmly. "Conversation?" she repeated, arching an eyebrow. "Because what I heard sounded less like conversation and more like criticism. Baseless criticism at that." Her tone was measured, yet there was an unmistakable edge to it that made Mark flinch. He opened his mouth to argue but quickly closed it again when he realized how futile it would be. There was no denying the truth. He'd behaved badly, and now he was paying the price for it. Still, pride being what it was, Mark struggled to admit fault outright. Instead, he attempted to shift the focus elsewhere. "Well, maybe if your prices weren't so outrageous, people wouldn't question them," he muttered under his breath. Unfortunately for him, Victoria's hearing was sharp enough to catch every word. Without missing a beat, she replied, "Our prices reflect the quality and exclusivity of our pieces. If you don't see the value in that, then perhaps Elegance isn't the right place for you." Her statement landed like a hammer blow, leaving Mark speechless. He glanced around the room, searching for some kind of support, or at least a friendly face, but found none. Everyone seemed either amused or indifferent to his predicament. Even Claire, who had initially greeted him warmly, now looked at him with barely concealed disdain. Sensing that the situation was spiraling further out of his control, Mark decided to try a different tactic. All right, he said, raising his hands in surrender. "You win. Clearly I underestimated this place. And you. My apologies." But Victoria wasn't about to let him off the hook so easily. Apologies were meaningless unless backed by genuine remorse, and she wasn't convinced he felt either. Crossing her arms, she gave him a long, appraising look. "Apologies are easy to give," she said evenly. "What matters is whether you truly understand why you owe them." For a moment, Mark looked genuinely conflicted. Whether it was guilt or embarrassment driving him, he finally managed to say, You're right, I shouldn't have come in here acting like I know better. I'll leave now. With that, he turned and walked briskly toward the exit, his earlier confidence replaced by awkwardness. As the door swung shut behind him, the entire boutique seemed to exhale collectively. The tension dissipated, replaced by quiet murmurs of approval from the remaining customers. Victoria turned to Claire, who was visibly relieved. "Thank you for handling him earlier," Victoria said sincerely. "And thank you for stepping in when I needed backup." Claire smiled. "Any time, Ms. Langley. That was, well, quite the experience." Victoria chuckled softly. "Indeed. Let's hope we don't get too many visitors like him." As soon as Mark disappeared from sight, the atmosphere inside Elegance shifted dramatically. What had started as a tense confrontation transformed into something almost celebratory. Customers who had been quietly observing the drama now approached Victoria, eager to share their thoughts. "That was amazing," exclaimed the older woman in the tailored suit. "You handled him perfectly. He deserved every bit of it." Another shopper chimed in. "Honestly, I've never seen anyone put a rude customer in their place so gracefully. You should teach a class on dealing with difficult people." Victoria laughed lightly, brushing off the compliments with characteristic humility. "It's all part of running a business," she said modestly. "We aim to treat everyone with respect, but we also expect the same in return." Her response only endeared her further to the crowd. Word spread quickly among the patrons, and within minutes several of them pulled out their phones to post about the incident on social media. By the end of the afternoon, hashtags like Respect and Class and Elegance Owner Wins were trending locally, drawing attention not just to the boutique but also to Victoria herself. Meanwhile, Claire gathered the team for a quick debrief. While the IE staff was thrilled with how things had turned out, they knew incidents like this could happen again, and preparation was key. "Ms. Langley really showed us how to stay calm under pressure," Claire told her colleagues. "Let's use this as a learning opportunity. No matter how challenging a customer gets, we stick together and handle it professionally." Back in her office, Victoria reflected on the day's events. She wasn't immune to frustration, but years of experience had taught her that reacting impulsively rarely solved anything. Instead, she chose to view the encounter as a reminder of why she loved her work so much. Elegance wasn't just a store. It was a community built on shared values of elegance, creativity, and mutual respect. People like Mark were outliers, temporary disruptions in an otherwise harmonious environment. Later that evening, as the boutique prepared to close, Victoria sat down to write a note for her team. In it, she expressed gratitude for their support during the day's unusual events and encouraged them to continue upholding the high standards they were known for. "Remember," she wrote, "our strength lies not just in the beauty of our designs but in the way we conduct ourselves. Kindness, patience, and professionalism will always set us apart." Unbeknownst to her, Mark was having a very different kind of evening. Back at his hotel, he replayed the confrontation in his mind, cringing at each memory. The smirks of the customers, the icy glares from Victoria, and the sound of the door closing behind him. It all came rushing back. For the first time in years, he felt genuinely ashamed of himself. Determined to make amends, Mark sat down at the desk in his room and penned a heartfelt apology letter to Victoria. In it, he admitted his mistakes, acknowledged the harm caused by his behavior, and promised to learn from the experience. He sealed the envelope and dropped it off at Elegance the next morning, hoping it might soften the blow of his earlier rudeness. When Victoria received the letter, she read it carefully, weighing his words against his actions. While she appreciated the effort, she understood that trust wasn't rebuilt overnight. Still, she decided to keep the letter as a reminder that people could change if they were willing to put in the work. And so life at Elegance returned to normal. The boutique buzzed with activity once again, its reputation stronger than ever thanks to the owner's steadfast commitment to excellence. For Mark, however, the lesson lingered long after he left the city, a stark reminder that arrogance has its limits, and humility often comes at a cost. The following morning, Elegance opened its doors as usual, bathed in soft sunlight streaming through the windows. The boutique buzzed with quiet energy, but there was an undeniable air of excitement among the staff. Word of Mark's dramatic exit and Victoria's poised handling of the situation had spread like wildfire within the team. Everyone was talking about it in hushed tones, marveling at how their boss had turned a potentially disastrous encounter into a moment of triumph. When Claire arrived for her shift, she found Victoria already seated at her desk in the back office, sipping a cup of tea and reviewing orders. Despite the previous day's chaos, Victoria looked calm and collected, as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Claire hesitated for a moment before knocking lightly on the doorframe. "Ms. Langley," she began cautiously, "how are you feeling today?" Victoria glanced up and smiled warmly. "I'm fine, thank you," she replied. "It was certainly an interesting day yesterday, wasn't it?" Claire nodded, stepping closer. "That's putting it mildly," she said, with a small laugh. "Everyone's talking about what happened. Honestly, I think some of our customers are going to come in just to hear the story themselves." "Well, they're welcome to visit anytime," Victoria said with a shrug. "But let's not dwell too much on negativity. What matters is that we handled it professionally and moved forward. That's the kind of attitude we want to project, not just to our customers but to each other." Her words resonated deeply with Claire, who admired Victoria's ability to focus on the bigger picture rather than getting bogged down by petty grievances. It was this mindset, she realized, that made Elegance such a special place. It wasn't just about selling dresses. It was about fostering relationships built on mutual respect and understanding. As the day progressed, the boutique welcomed a steady stream of visitors, many of whom were eager to share their thoughts on the incident. Some praised Victoria's composure, while others expressed outrage on her behalf. One particularly loyal client even joked, "If he ever shows his face here again, I'll personally escort him out." By mid-afternoon, however, something unexpected arrived, a neatly sealed envelope addressed to Victoria. Claire handed it to her cautiously, unsure of what to expect. Inside was a handwritten letter from Mark Thompson, the same man who had caused such a stir less than 24 hours earlier. In the letter, Mark apologized profusely for his behavior, acknowledging that he had acted arrogantly and disrespectfully. He admitted that his comments were unwarranted and promised to reflect on his actions moving forward. "I underestimated both you and your incredible boutique," he wrote. "Please accept my sincerest apologies. I hope one day I can earn your forgiveness." Victoria read the letter twice, her expression unreadable. On one hand, she appreciated the gesture. It took courage to admit fault, especially after being publicly humiliated. On the other hand, she knew that words alone couldn't erase the impact of his behavior. Trust had to be earned over time, not granted because of a single apology. After careful consideration, Victoria decided to respond. She drafted a brief note thanking Mark for his honesty and willingness to acknowledge his mistakes. However, she also emphasized the importance of accountability and growth. "Mistakes happen," she wrote, "but true change comes when we commit to learning from them. I wish you the best in your journey." She tucked the reply into another envelope and instructed Claire to mail it later that evening. As she returned to her work, Victoria felt a sense of closure wash over her. The incident with Mark had been unpleasant, yes, but it had also reinforced her belief in the power of integrity and grace under pressure. Over the next few weeks, life at Elegance settled back into its usual rhythm. The boutique continued to thrive, attracting new clients and delighting regulars with its exquisite designs and impeccable service. Yet the memory of Mark's visit lingered, not as a source of bitterness, but as a reminder of the values that defined the business. Victoria used the experience as a teaching moment for her team. During their weekly meeting, she gathered everyone in the back room and shared her thoughts on handling difficult situations. "Not every customer will walk in with good intentions," she began. "Some may challenge us, criticize us, or even insult us. But it's important to remember that our response defines us, not their behavior." She went on to explain how staying calm and composed could often diffuse tense situations, while reacting impulsively might escalate them. "We're not expected to tolerate disrespect," she clarified, "but we are expected to rise above it." Professionalism isn't just about what we sell, it's about how we conduct ourselves. Her speech inspired the team, sparking lively discussions about past experiences and strategies for dealing with challenging customers. Claire shared a story about a bride-to-be who had become hysterical during a fitting, only to apologize profusely afterward. Another associate recalled a demanding client whose unrealistic expectations had tested everyone's patience. Through these anecdotes, the team realized that navigating conflict was part of their job and something they could handle together. Meanwhile, outside the walls of Elegance, Mark Thompson was undergoing his own transformation. Back home, he replayed the events of his visit to the boutique repeatedly, analyzing where he had gone wrong. His arrogance had blinded him to the fact that people judged him based on his actions, not his suit or title. Determined to improve, he enrolled in workshops focused on emotional intelligence and effective communication. At first, Mark struggled to break old habits. Years of relying on charm and bravado had left him ill-equipped to handle criticism constructively. But slowly, he began to see patterns in his behavior, moments when he dismissed others' opinions or belittled their efforts without realizing it. With guidance from his instructors, he learned to listen actively, empathize genuinely, and approach conversations with humility rather than superiority. One evening, while attending a networking event, Mark found himself chatting with a woman who owned a chain of art galleries. When she asked about his recent projects, he hesitated before sharing the story of his encounter at Elegance. To his surprise, instead of judging him harshly, she listened intently and offered advice. "Sometimes the hardest lessons stick with us forever," she said kindly. "What matters is what you do with them." Encouraged by her support, Mark started incorporating what he'd learned into his daily interactions. He became more mindful of how he spoke to colleagues, clients, and strangers alike. Over time, he noticed subtle changes, not just in how others responded to him, but in how he viewed himself. For the first time in years, he felt grounded, aware of his flaws yet motivated to grow. Though he never returned to Elegance, Mark occasionally thought about Victoria and her team. Their professionalism and poise had left an indelible mark on him, serving as a powerful reminder of the importance of treating others with dignity and respect. And while he doubted they'd forgive him anytime soon, he hoped that someday he might prove himself worthy of redemption. Back at Elegance, Victoria remained unaware of Mark's personal journey. Her focus remained firmly on her boutique and the community it served. Yet she couldn't help but feel proud knowing that her actions had sparked meaningful reflection. Not just for herself and her team, but perhaps for someone else as well. As the seasons changed and new collections filled the racks, Elegance stood as a testament to resilience, creativity, and timeless elegance. And Victoria? She continued to lead with the same quiet strength that had guided her through countless challenges, always ready to face whatever came next with grace and determination. Months passed, and Elegance continued to flourish. The boutique became more than just a destination for luxury dresses. It evolved into a symbol of resilience, sophistication, and unwavering principles. Victoria's leadership inspired not only her team, but also the loyal clientele who frequented the store. People weren't just buying gowns. They were investing in an experience, one rooted in respect, artistry, and mutual appreciation. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves swirled outside the boutique's windows, Claire approached Victoria with an unusual request. "Ms. Langley," she began hesitantly, "there's something I've been meaning to ask you about." Victoria looked up from the sketches she was reviewing and smiled warmly. "Of course, Claire, what is it?" "Well," Claire paused, choosing her words carefully. "A lot of our customers have been asking about that incident with the rude salesman, the one who insulted the boutique. They want to know how you stayed so calm and handled everything so perfectly. Some even suggested we host some kind of event or workshop where you could share your insights on dealing with difficult situations." Victoria chuckled softly, setting down her pen. "That's very flattering, but I'm not sure I'm ready to turn my life into public speaking material just yet," she said with a playful glint in her eye. "Besides, handling challenges isn't unique to me. It's something all of us face at some point." Claire nodded thoughtfully, I get that. But still, people are inspired by what you did. Maybe it doesn't have to be a big lecture or anything formal, just something small, a casual gathering where you talk about the importance of staying professional no matter what happens. The idea lingered in Victoria's mind throughout the day. While she wasn't one to seek the spotlight, she recognized the value of sharing lessons learned, not for personal gain, but to empower others. After discussing it with her team, they decided to organize an intimate evening event called Grace Under Pressure. It would feature light refreshments, short talks from Victoria and Claire, and an open forum for attendees to share their own experiences. The event drew a diverse crowd, longtime clients, aspiring entrepreneurs, and even a few local journalists eager to hear Victoria's story. Dressed in a sleek navy blue dress, Victoria took center stage, her presence commanding yet approachable. She began by recounting the infamous encounter with Mark, emphasizing not just the outcome, but the emotions behind it. "I won't lie," she admitted candidly. "It wasn't easy hearing those harsh words directed at my business and at me personally. But I realized that his behavior reflected more about him than it did about us. And instead of letting anger take over, I chose to respond with patience and professionalism." Her honesty resonated deeply with the audience. One woman raised her hand and shared a story about a difficult boss who constantly undermined her work. Another attendee spoke about a customer who had berated them in front of coworkers, leaving them feeling humiliated. Slowly but surely, the room transformed into a safe space for vulnerability and growth. As the evening wrapped up, Victoria concluded with a powerful message. We can't control how others treat us, but we can control how we react. Every challenge is an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to show the world who we truly are. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Mark Thompson was making strides of his own. The workshops he attended had opened his eyes to new ways of thinking and interacting with others. He started applying these lessons in both his personal and professional life, earning praise from colleagues and clients alike. His once overbearing demeanor softened, replaced by genuine curiosity and empathy. One day, while scrolling through social media, Mark stumbled upon photos from Elegance's Grace Under Pressure event. Intrigued, he clicked on the article, linked below the images, and read about Victoria's speech. Her words struck a chord within him, reminding him of the lessons he'd worked so hard to internalize. Feeling inspired, Mark decided to write another letter. This time not to apologize, but to express gratitude. He thanked Victoria for unknowingly inspiring him to become a better version of himself. "Your strength and composure taught me something invaluable," he wrote. "You showed me that true success isn't measured by wealth or titles, it's measured by character." When Victoria received the letter, she felt a surge of pride, not because she had changed someone's life, but because Mark had taken responsibility for his actions and grown from the experience. She tucked the letter away in a drawer, adding it to the collection of notes and mementos that reminded her why she loved what she did. Years later, Elegance remained a beacon of elegance and integrity, its legacy stronger than ever. Victoria's leadership style became legendary, inspiring countless individuals to prioritize kindness and professionalism in their own lives. As for Mark, he went on to build a thriving career built on authenticity and humility, often citing his encounter at Elegance as a turning point. In the end, the story wasn't just about a clash between two people. It was about growth, redemption, and the ripple effects of grace. Whether it was Victoria standing firm in her values or Mark learning to embrace humility, both emerged from the experience transformed. And though their paths never crossed again, the impact of that single day lingered, proving that even the most challenging moments could lead to something beautiful.